Hey, what's up, guys? Simon Edwards at Pumacom here with Heat Seeker Sports, and you're watching the Best Ball Big Board Show. We're going to be doing a big board draft on this show, but first we're going to talk about macro strategies for the 2024 NFL season. And I brought on the perfect guest to talk about that. She crushed it with her advance rates using macro strategies in the Best Ball drafts last season for Underdog. Meg, what's going on? Meg Shoup from FanSpeak.
I'm doing great, Simon. Thank you so much for having me on. Yeah, I'm become fully obsessed with best ball. So I love NFL best ball because I'm an NFL girl only. So it allows NFL to be 365 year round. And yep, I've already gotten into the big board streets and excited to talk strategy and do a draft with you.
Yeah, like Meg had a lot of success, like I mentioned, and a lot of the things that she was talking about last season was on her site FanSpeak, and she went into a bunch of these strategies before the season started. Ended up hitting on a lot of them. Had a really, really good advance rate, and almost made a few teams to the finals. Meg, why don't you talk about what your season was like last year for best ball before we get into what we think is going to happen in 2024?
Sure. Yeah. I did most of my drafts. I do best ball drafts on Drafters and DraftKings too, but I do most of my drafts on Underdog. And so I had a 27% advance rate on Underdog into the playoffs. And so I was really happy with that. Had a decent, quarterfinals week, but semifinals week was rough, really rough for me. Very highly exposed to the Lions that kind of let me down. And, then other teams wheels were falling off with injuries with, Chargers and Dolphins and other things that I was highly exposed to. So, it was a great advance rate. It was a great season overall, but unfortunately the semifinals did not go the way I wanted. And that's best ball. That's kind of the way it works. And that's why you want kind of as many shots to the playoffs as you can to get as many potential shots. It's a volume game, to make your way to finals. And there's some things I learned that I want to do differently, even from advance rate structure and really paying attention to that this year. But yeah, I was happy with my results. It just, the year prior, I had made the Best Ball Mania finals, and that was just absolutely thrill. So, I didn't get to make the Best Ball Mania finals or the finals this year. My brother did have a finals appearance on DraftKings, I believe. I still am obsessed and love the best ball space and really just see it going nothing but, skyrocketing each and every year, and can't wait to get more into it this year.
Yeah. And this is going to be another great year for it. Drafting seems to be starting earlier and earlier every year. We are in mid-February right now, and I've already done a couple drafts on Underdog, and it's crazy to think that. And we'll get into a draft on here and kind of give you guys a look at ADP. We're going to talk about macro strategy first. Before we do that, make sure to hit the like button. Looking for about 20 likes. I'm going to put out a series of short videos with highlighting teams to focus on and individual players and whatnot. But before I do that, make sure to hit the like, get us up to 20 likes, and I can put out the first one. Going to focus on the Atlanta Falcons. I like how the Atlanta Falcons are looking so far this year and the potential that they have. Also, make sure to subscribe to the YouTube page. Looking for about 600 subscribers by the end of March. Want to try to get those YouTube subscribers up, so help me out there. And I'm at about 500 right now, so only need about 100 to go there. So definitely appreciate the subscribers to the YouTube page. And Meg, let's get into basically what some of these strategies were last season for you. Like, I think that macro strategies in general, when you're building a portfolio of teams, is very important. Mm-hmm. It's even more important than player selection to an extent. And one of the macro strategies that you had last year was focusing on rookie tight ends. And obviously last year, we didn't have any idea which of these rookie tight ends were going to break out. We just knew that it was going to be an exceptional rookie class of tight ends, probably the best rookie tight end class that we've had ever. Right. And you were able to identify that and go against the typical norms for best ball drafting, where they tell you to avoid rookie tight ends because they never break out or they never really, it's a position that takes a while to have your breakout season for, but you went all in on drafting these rookie tight ends. So why don't you talk a little bit about what you recognized last year and why you decided to do that?
Yeah, well, first I got to give credit to my brother who we do content together on FanSpeak.com. He is, and we'll talk more about this later. We have a big NFL draft component to fanspeak.com, and he's always been like the draft scout, the scout for us. He used to go down to the Senior Bowl for about a decade, so he's really scouted at different levels, and so he very much in the scouting streets, in the draft streets, paying attention, and he knew right away that identified that this was a historically good, talented, elite, and somewhat deep tight end class last year. And, but even before at this time last year, we knew there was, 4 or 5 guys that could really make an impact to their teams right away. And then of course, once they hit the landing spots, I of course zoomed in, especially on Sam Laporta, because the Lions had historically used their tight ends in this offense with Ben Johnson the year prior. I think the Lions had, I don't know the exact number, let's say 11 or 12 touchdowns. And, that was 9 of them were after they traded TJ Hawkinson. So that was with guys like Brock Wright. So, if guys like Brock Wright and I believe James Mitchell are making up 8 or 9 touchdowns, well, then I think a very talented Sam Laporta can as well. So it kind of started at this season. Oh my gosh, this is an incredibly elite tight end class. And then once the landing hit the landing spots, then we identified, no, there's some guys that landed in great spots with, and not all bared out perfectly, but, with obviously Laporta to the Lions, Musgrave to the Packers, Michael Mayer to the Raiders, and then of course Kincaid to the Bills. So, we were very high on those 4 tight ends throughout the process, because it wasn't until the very end that they were really all starting to pop up the draft boards.
Yeah, another thing that Meg did that I liked was a lot of these best ball content producers, they kind of have the same rules for building your lineups, and they give you a certain formula that you need to follow for building your lineups, and everybody kind of conforms to that formula. And one of those formulas is, you have to have only 2 quarterbacks on your team because you don't want to waste a spot on a 3rd quarterback and take away from your wide receivers. And one of the things that Meg did differently from that typical trend last year, and this is important on a macro level too, she built a large portfolio of teams, and on a majority of those teams, she had 3 quarterbacks, which went against best ball norms that are typical for drafting, that are recommended by the content providers out there. So Meg, why don't you talk a little bit about why you decided to go in that direction and how it ended up paying off?
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you, by the way. And, this time of year, this whole kind of after the Super Bowl to the draft and even early spring, like in May, I spent a lot of time trying to research, data from the prior year and really how could I use that data to work to my benefit? And, what are the content providers saying? And do I agree with them or not? And that kind of stuff. So, you really get into the data these next few months and then see how you want to then use it to your advantage. And I just, when all content providers were saying 2 quarterbacks, I think that was optimal a couple of years ago when scoring was up the scoring was up dramatically a couple of years ago and has come down 2 years in a row. Also, the year prior, the 2022 season, we had another season of a lot of quarterback injuries. I want to say there was, 67 different quarterbacks that started that year. I don't know the exact number, but, a very high amount of quarterbacks that started that year. And so, yes, you want to be hopeful that these guys stay healthy or don't get benched, but ultimately that is, hasn't been a reality for, the last couple of years. And so that kind of bared out again, even worse this year. And people just threw their hands up and didn't understand, but that was the results going into it. It was for multiple reasons. I thought 3 quarterbacks were beneficial. Maybe some of it was kind of success bias because the Best Ball Mania 3 team that I had make it to the finals did have 3 quarterbacks. And I've told this story, Spread, who's on your channel a lot, jokes with me about if I hear this story one more time, I'm going to scream. But if you're watching, I'm sorry. Here's the deal. Like, I would not have even made the playoffs, let alone the finals, in what was one of the coolest sweats of my life in this space. because I had Dak Prescott and he was out for 6 weeks. And so a lot of people will say, well, if, you know, one of your top quarterbacks goes out, your team's dead. And it's like, well, not necessarily. If he's out 4 weeks, 5 weeks, 6 weeks, you can survive that. Yeah. If one of your top quarterbacks goes down week 2, you're in trouble. But, you know, if he's just out 6 weeks, I had Kirk Cousins and hilariously enough, Carson Wentz. Carson Wentz had a couple spike weeks while Dak Prescott was out, during some times that Cousins didn't have spike weeks. And then Cousins really turned it on, and then Dak turned it on. Didn't matter that then I only needed 2 weeks from Carson Wentz, and that helped me then get to the playoffs. So, you know, it was number one, it helps protect injuries. Number two, you know, a few years ago, yeah, there was these like what felt like 3 or 4 or 5 quarterbacks that had like these insane floor ceilings. And, you know, what we've seen this last year or two is really only last year, for instance, Jalen Hurts and Josh Allen had that safe floor and gave you that ceiling, you know, and they're 2 rushing quarterbacks, which, you know, do present a risk from an injury standpoint, and have kind of, you know, have dodged it to a certain level mostly. But so it was injury, number one, protecting against that. Number two, protecting that floor ceiling. You know, how many times did we see Mahomes this last year have, you know, 10-point games, 12-point games? So there's, you know, elite quarterbacks that you're drafting in the last year, 2nd, 3rd, 4th, 5th round that were not providing you even floor weeks a lot of times. So it just to get to playoffs, you need it gives you 3 quarterbacks. And then the third reason is having 3 quarterbacks, if you're stacking with them, gives you 3 quarterback stacks in the playoffs, because it is a gauntlet in the playoffs. I mean, you have to make it, if you were in the flagship tournament last year, and I hope, you know, advance rates are a little bit better and aren't quite as challenging, but you had to make it 1 out of 16 teams to get to the quarterfinals to semifinals, semifinals to finals. So 1 out of 16 is hard. And so you really want to give every opportunity possible. And having 3 quarterback stacks or team stacks gives you that option. Because let's be honest, not every even elite offense goes off every single week. And so that gave some optionality.
Yeah. And the thing with quarterbacks too is like you were talking about, all those quarterbacks that were going super early. Mm-hmm. Usually when people spend a pick that early on a quarterback, they don't want to spend much more of their equity on quarterbacks. Mm-hmm. And it made a lot of sense to kind of fade those early quarterbacks and just go with 3 late round quarterbacks. Because another thing that was being discussed predominantly last year by a lot of these content providers was that late round quarterback is dead. Mm-hmm. And that turned out not to be the case last year, because we saw a bunch of breakouts from guys like Baker Mayfield and mm-hmm. Brock Purdy and CJ Stroud, and just guys that you could get like in double-digit rounds and beyond. People were still high on Geno Smith. I was not on Geno last year at all.
Yeah,
like,
But, I'd be like, all right, I should get some exposure. Yeah, and I was not.
Yeah, exactly. Like, but did you tend to focus on those quarterbacks that were in the double-digit rounds, or did you draft like one in the mid rounds somewhere and then focus on later rounds? Like, how did you go about like that approach last year?
Yeah, my favorite kind of structure last year was almost like filling out like my starting running backs and receivers before I touched quarterback. And if I did that, then I felt like I had a very, of course, you again have to get past the injury aspect for them too. But like if I got kind of, even if you count, I'd say three starting running backs, say that, you know, especially on Underdog, that can lend itself more to the flex. And then the running back position, that is, and then four starting receivers. I would sometimes draft like set, and then I was drafting more late round tight end. So I was usually sometimes wouldn't touch a quarterback till round 8, you know, and I'd start in that like Tua Dak range and kind of go from there, because those were high. And now some exceptions were, I was very high on Justin Herbert last year, and he was, I believe, round 5 last year. Mm-hmm. So those were some exceptions. And I did, you know, make sure I always try to diversify my portfolio. So I was making sure to get some exposure to the elite quarterbacks. So I think I had about 9% Mahomes and like 5 or 6% Josh Allen and Jalen Hurts. So I still had exposure, but I was slightly under, because 8% is like, the average. So I was slightly under the field on Allen and Hurts, who they were actually the ones you wanted, and instead of Mahomes, and about 9% Mahomes. So, but yeah, much, much, much higher on, you were getting Dak in the 10th, 11th round last year. And again, we'll talk about that more as another strategy that kind of I focused in on, that I think can benefit this year's just looking for those undervalued offenses that Dak churns out numbers year after year, and people are always kind of grossed out by drafting him for some reason, and kind of always give him a lot of pushback. But, he's pretty consistent fantasy producer, and he was going after Anthony Richardson last year. He was going after, a lot of guys that I didn't agree with, and going way too late, in my opinion. So that's why I had a very high exposure to Dak Prescott. Was one of my highest owned quarterbacks, which helped too. And that's a micro take, obviously. But yeah, from a macro perspective, I was fine like filling out that running back receiver position first, and then addressing the quarterback, and then kind of hitting like 2 in the middle and 1 late.
Yeah. And that made a ton of sense. And it felt uncomfortable last year. I just remember I started late with my drafting last season. And I just remember jumping in, probably in like June or July, and recognizing that there are so many quarterbacks going in the second and third rounds. It made I was like, what the hell is going on in best ball? And, I didn't really, put 2 and 2 together last year myself, and thinking, well, I need to focus more on drafting some of these late round quarterbacks, and just focus on going against the trend here, because a lot of those quarterbacks are guys that I've been drafting for the last few years. Like you'd see Jalen Hurts and obviously Josh Allen, and even other guys were getting drafted earlier and earlier. So it seemed like you needed to kind of lock in your quarterback early, or you would be in trouble. But like you said, a lot of these running quarterbacks, or a lot of the quarterbacks that traditionally have the most upside, they ended up having, pretty average seasons. And you look at Patrick Mahomes, for instance, it turned out that he had no weapons, and, he ended up having a very mediocre season, and people were drafting him in like the second, third round.
Yep.
So it made a ton of sense last year to wait on quarterbacks, and that late round quarterback trend kind of came around again. So it's like a lot of these trends that people go away from, they still exist. They just may have had it like a bad year the year before, or a couple years before. So it's good when you recognize that some of these trends are people are going away from these trends to kind of go back to them. And, maybe there's a trend this season that we'll recognize when we get more and more into drafting that the field is doing, that we can go against this year and have a edge as far as a little differentiation from what the norm is. And I don't know. I've only drafted a few times so far, Meg, but I don't know how many drafts you've done, but have you recognized any of those trends that people are getting away from that might be good to revisit?
Well, I think it's interesting. First of all, to your point, I kind of like what you said. It's like fashion. It's like, the trend's not dead. It just might come back. And so, yeah, I think it's good about exploring, being willing to kind of zig when others zag, and not just always following, and don't always just follow what worked last year, because the thing about best ball that makes it so beautiful, earlier you talked about, other content kind of providers saying there's rules. Yeah, there's ways to draft wrong. Like there's ways that are just, very suboptimal to draft, but there's not rules. And that's what's so beautiful and wonderful about best ball, is it's still relatively new. I mean, this is going to be Best Ball Mania 5 on Underdog. It's still relatively new, growing industry and contest here. And, so it's not like we have 15 years of data to say, okay, this is absolutely what has worked year after year after year. So number one, it's new. And I think that's what kind of gives you the permission to kind of not feel like there's absolutely hard and fast rules that you can or can't do. Number one. Number two, you definitely need to kind of look to see what may be different. Like last year, the quarterbacks were so high. Like when the drafts actually started, quarterbacks were going in the first round. It was unreal. It was just And it's because what worked the year before. And so that's the other point I wanted to make is don't just assume whatever worked the year before is going to be copy and paste for this year. Every NFL season is its own beast and its own, unique, product. And that product is going to be what yields the results for best ball. And it's not copy and paste. Now, yes, zero RB, a type of draft strategy and drafting, maybe 3 or 4 receivers with your first picks and then kind of drafting running backs later. It has been a successful strategy kind of 2 years in a row, but the year prior and the year prior to that, it wasn't as successful. So, who knows, like that may be one to look further into to say, I always like to mix my portfolio as far as the different draft strategies are concerned, zero RB being one of them, or hero RB or double hero RB or late round tight end, all the different strategies I like to mix because I don't ever want to do just one of those type of strategies because again, what's the right one this season? So I want to mix my portfolio with those different strategies. But, for instance, I would just say that don't just assume whatever worked last year, let's copy and paste it. And that's going to be what works this year. So it's interesting. Now quarterbacks are sliding down because people saw kind of the quarterback Armageddon last year. And it's like, well, I can't spend that much on a quarterback. And that doesn't mean I'm going to necessarily draft higher than that. I still, like the 3 quarterback thing, like addressing, the other positions first. But I'll see as the draft landscape kind of moves month to month here. But I would just say really, really, really pay attention to the trends and just know that you don't have to follow a trend exactly just because that worked last year. Make sure you're noting why it worked last year and what could work this year, and whatever trends or strategies you're doing, be sure to diversify your portfolio because we honestly, nobody, unless you have a gift to read the future, is going to know what the right kind of trends of this season are going to be.
And that's one of the beauty of these trends is that like everybody's always chasing.
Yeah.
Like the field is usually chasing what happened last year.
Exactly.
And and a lot of the content creators out there, like the podcasts and stuff that I listen to, a lot of them refer to stuff that happened like last year as it's the new norm. And I think an easy way to kind of get away from those everybody following the herd and everything is just do the opposite of what some of these podcasts. If you recognize a trend that everybody is talking up and getting away from it, that sets you up to be very successful with your macro strategy and getting away from certain trends or whatever that are going to be over popular. Like this year, like Meg said, I noticed that the quarterbacks are not going as early as they did last year, but that doesn't mean that what happened 2 years ago isn't in play for this season. That made people draft all those quarterbacks super early last year. So if this year, if you wanted to do, like a strategy similar to what people were trying to do last year, they overpaid for the quarterbacks and shot them up too expensive in these drafts because they were getting talked up so much. They're not getting talked up this year. You can get a discount on them. So, like that might be a trend that we recognize as we get further and further as the season goes on. It's kind of like the stock market, like in the stock, like basically ADP and these best ball drafts are basically the stock market. And
I always say that too. I totally agree. Yeah.
Like from like the days when I was trading stocks and stuff, it's just like it's hard to buck the trend and to sell the hype stock and to buy the stock that's in the dump. Like it is a lot harder to do than it is to say. But with ADP and fantasy football, it's the exact same way. It's like when people are talking about how running backs don't matter, like that is a year that you want to be drafting like Christian McCaffrey, number 1 overall.
We
like
should have last year. That was,
exactly. And then, just stuff like that. So those are macro trends that we can focus on. Another one that Meg focused on last year was just general team stacks. Now, Meg, what teams were you targeting last year, and what was your strategy with overstacking on teams?
Yeah, the teams I was stacking, I was trying to look at my strategy for which teams to stack is looking for undervalued stacks or stacks that, obviously teams like the Eagles, Bengals, and rightfully so, Bills, you just had to pay such a high price. And again, there's merit to why, but I was looking for undervalued stacks and so I focused on the Chargers, the Cowboys, the Lions, were my three top ones. And then my value one was Washington. And yeah, there's a little homerism there, but I was hopeful about Eric Bieniemy and the offense that did not bear out. Sam Howell did. He was a good late round pick. Brian Robinson was a good late round running back, or, you could get him in the 10th round. But unfortunately, the way they distributed the ball, the receivers were not. So, but yeah, Chargers, Cowboys, and Lions were my three biggest ones. Of these teams are highly successful, top 10 offenses, top 10 in, all these different offensive metrics, red zone, yards, touchdowns, general, scoring, the things that count in fantasy. And they just were being undervalued by the market. And so those were my three biggest teams, with, some other ones then falling behind, like right behind that, like the Dolphins, which helped, getting like both their running backs last year. So yeah, I'd say those five were probably the teams that I was highest on, but just looking for those undervalued teams and being willing to stack at other positions. That's the other big point I want to make is so often people say, well, I got Tua, for instance. Oh, well, I could only get Tyreek Hill. Let me get, River Craycraft. And it's like, no, don't get River Craycraft, or don't get like the tight end that they never use. Get one or two of the running backs. You don't have to just say, I got the quarterback, I have to stack with two receivers. It doesn't have to, it's to be like that. You can stack. In fact, I like it better stacking with like quarterback, running back, receiver, or quarterback, running back, tight end, probably my favorite is quarterback, running back, receiver, tight end. Cause then you can if they're a top 5 scoring offense, you can just let that scoring oscillate through the season and the playoffs. And maybe, let's say in the instance of the Dolphins, it didn't happen this year, they got very injured, but let's say, Mostert has a giant week, the first week of the playoffs, but Tua and the passing game doesn't, that gets a lower owned Tua into the semifinals. And then maybe Tua and Hill have a big week then that pushes you in. That maybe then Mostert's lower in the final. You can work that situation because the ownership and how that works in the playoffs is very, very interesting. It's really just it's like success each week. And so sometimes, like, if one isn't successful, you can pull like other guys with you that might be lower owned and then could potentially go off in the next round. So I like stacking at multiple positions on a team.
Yeah. And just kind of all this stuff just kind of combines to help you build a somewhat diverse portfolio of teams. Because if you're focusing on macro trends instead of, just player picks and recommended picks and all that kind of stuff, you can build a team that has the makeup of the macro and is differentiated from the field because you didn't focus on, just drafting all of, the Eagles or all of like one of the teams that are going to be popular when they're drafted. If you mix in macro and then you're bringing in team stacks, like late team stacks that a lot of people aren't talking about, or a lot of people aren't drafting, like you could probably find the Patriots super cheap this year or something like that. They're coming in with a brand new identity. We don't know what they're going to look like on offense. People are going to shy away from them. It might be an opportunity to try to get some exposure there, or, like just using that as an example. But there's a lot of teams that are going to be out there like that. Kind of like last year, we had teams like the Houston Texans.
I was going to say the Texans were the one that I missed on last year. They were the most undervalued stack that absolutely smashed.
Yeah, exactly. And just a perfect example of what I'm talking about, like fading content providers is with the Texans, because everybody was talking about how CJ Stroud was going to be a bust, and CJ Stroud, he might not even be the second overall pick. And it just got like ridiculous before the draft. He finally got drafted, obviously, where he got drafted in Houston, but the taint on him from all the negative talk leading into that draft had him so far down the boards that, like, if you would have just taken a gamble on him and drafted him along with like Nico Collins and Tank Dell, like just drafting that team, you would have recognized, okay, Tank Dell is this rookie wide receiver. He's coming into a situation where there's not going to be a lot of target competition. Nico Collins is probably going to be the wide receiver one, but is Dusty Robert Woods going to be the guy taking all the targets, or should I focus on this rookie in Tank Dell that could potentially have a breakout season? So I mean, stuff like that type of thinking is like on the macro level is what helps you come to those types of decision making when you're doing your drafts. And I think ultimately it could either set you up, like if you recognize a team like the Texans or something like that, or like at least diversify your portfolio if you're not going all in on a team like that, but you have a decent amount of exposure that gives you more than the field in general.
Right. Absolutely.
So Meg on FanSpeak has a tool called the Ultimate GM, which simulates it's going to simulate 2024 free agency and the draft and everything to help you out with drafting your teams. But Meg, why don't you go into a little bit of a talk about that, and then we'll start drafting one of these big board drafts.
Absolutely. Yeah. On the Clock is the mock draft simulator that we have for every NFL draft year. And so that lets you simulate the draft. So you can simulate the 2024 draft. Ultimate GM, you can walk through the entire free agency period. Obviously trading players, going through free agency. I mean, then that will obviously, we only have a little bit longer on that, and then right into the NFL draft, and then has more NFL draft features like being able to make trades and see other kind of details and that kind of stuff. Also, it's all ads free in everything on fanspeak.com. We have multiple simulators. Obviously, we have a lot of content, which will include a lot of best ball articles starting essentially this week and then ramping up all the way through the best ball season. So you get everything ads free on FanSpeak, which is nice. And it's only $19.95 for the entire year. So an annual subscription, $19.95 and ads free, and you can simulate the entire off season, NFL draft, and it's a really cool experience that people like, because it's interesting to see different scenarios that could play out in the NFL draft. Actually, you can apply that to best ball to see where different, this is a great receiver class, see where different receivers are going. Guys like Ladd McConkey were way down on people's boards, and now he's skyrocketing up. Maybe he's this year's Puka Nacua, but now I don't think he's going to be under the radar going in the 6th round or whatever. I think this guy's probably going more like second or third. So you get to see different trends of the NFL draft too, which is really interesting.
How can you not draft a guy named Ladd McConkey? Anyway?
Exactly, right? Great name, exactly.
Like Meg's going to be putting out like a lot of free articles too. Her brother is knee deep in analyzing these rookie draft coming in. So when are you guys going to start putting out those articles, Meg?
Starting hopefully this week. We already did our first Rookies show. We're doing a Rookies pre-draft series on the FanSpeak network on YouTube right now that you can see us break down each by position. And then, then after the draft, we'll do it all again once we know the rookies' landing spots, because these are key decisions on these rookies. And it helps. Honestly, Steve was the reason that like I said earlier in the show, talked about got on the tight ends and Sam Laporta so early, because I talked about these Iowa tight ends and this tight end class, and why would Sam Laporta fit with the Lions, and those kind of things. That helps to get into the rookies, and especially this year with this rookie wide receiver class. So check out those shows on FanSpeak Network. But then Steve will do a rookie series both before and after the draft, and I'm doing a lot of strategy articles, best ball articles leading up to like looking back at 2023 and 2024 and kind of what we're talking about now, and that'll be on FanSpeak, and then it'll just ramp up. We'll have a ton of best ball content all throughout the spring, and then tons of best ball content on the summer on fanspeak.com.
Yeah, and all those macro trends that we just talked about were all directly from FanSpeak last year. Like every one of those trends, they had an article about leading into the season. So they basically gave you the blueprint to have a monster advance rate and to potentially set yourself up to have a huge showing on Best Ball last year. So make sure to check them out and follow along on the Twitter. What Twitter handle do you recommend?
Yeah, I mean, you can follow. It's right there for me. I'm at Meg's 08 DFS. Steve, my brother, is at SteveOSpeak or at FanSpeak.
Yeah. And so now let's get into a draft here, Meg.
Yep.
We'll check out a big board draft. We'll kind of give people an idea of where people players are falling right now. It's been probably a few drafts for me so far. I'm starting to get a better idea of where to draft certain guys, but it's still,
I'm still learning too, because I'm 5 in, and it's just those first couple drafts. It's really like getting your feet wet, getting the lay of the land, right?
Yep.
I was going to say, just tell me when to hit enter, and I have it pulled up.
All right, let's do it on the count of 3. 3, 2, 1, enter.
Okay.
8 more to start. Okay, so we got a little bit of time.
Okay.
So yeah, like Meg was saying, it's constantly shifting. You got the Lad McConkeys of the world that are shooting up the draft board. I can't wait to see this dude at the combine because
I know, because he just skyrocketed after Senior Bowl week. Yeah.
Like I've been listening to. I'm not super familiar with college ball. I don't follow a lot of college football. So that's why it's good for
me either. That's why I listen to my brother and other people that know more than I do.
yeah, exactly. And so that's why I'm looking forward to these articles and stuff coming out on sites like FanSpeak. And it's gonna give me a better idea. Usually feel a lot more confident once we get a couple months removed from the draft. But once we get or from the season starting, once we get into getting some of these missing pieces sorted out, like right now, we still got to go through free agency. We got the combine. We have the NFL draft. We have, just all the training camp and everything where we're going to start to see how these players are meshing and the teams are meshing together with the coaches and everything. We still have a lot of information that's gonna be coming out like in the next few months. And that's why, it's good to dabble in this. I wouldn't go all in on drafting right now, but if you feel like you can recognize some value, it's a good time to do it. And make sure to sign up for an Underdog account using the promo code SEEK. That's SEEK. That's going to get you up to $100 match on your first deposit on Underdog. But also, if you hit me up on Twitter at Pumacom, I'll send you my rankings in addition to that. So you get a little bit of a bonus for using that promo code SEEK. And once we get, like I said, past the draft and free agency and stuff, we'll have and the schedule release. We still got
May. Yeah, that's what I mean. It's like March is free agency, April's draft, May's free schedule release. There's something every month. I love it.
Yep, and that's what makes it like super important to be drafting, 3 quarterbacks this time of year when you're doing these drafts too, because it's going to be, like a situation where you don't want to end up with 2 quarterbacks with the same bye week or same with tight ends. So that they give you a couple extra spots. They give you 20 draft spots in this draft, which is nice. So you can draft the 3rd quarterback or 4th quarterback, whatever you want to do, worry free.
Right. Because, once we hit after the draft season, all of Underdog's drafts will be 18 rounds. So, that's a great point about the big board's 20.
Let's see. So, Meg, you are
7.
You are pick 7. Okay. So I'm pick 5. So we're in pretty decent spots, I
don't love 7. I prefer, no matter what best ball draft, I've always seemed to like either like the kind of 1 through 3. Trying to get one of those elites, or like the back half, like the 10 through 12, because then you can kind of make those decisions at the turn, so that's kind of been, I've never liked the middle, but that's okay. We're going to make the best of it.
For me in the beginning like this, like I hate the back end because I don't like the guys that are falling. I'm not sold on them yet. I still got to do a bunch of, like research to be sold on them.
Right.
But like it's like right now I feel comfortable in the middle because my choices are going to be Tyreek, Jamar Chase.
I was going to say at 5, I think you're still good. At 7, I have a little more like decisions to make. Yeah.
So,
like Chase fell to you. Yeah.
Okay, so I'm getting Chase here, so I feel pretty confident with that as the fifth pick. But who are you thinking here, Megan? Which
I
direction are
actually
you thinking?
think if it probably will come to the two top of the board if Brees Hall or Amon-Ra. I'd be fine taking, we talked about the kind of zigging when others zag, like there's still going to be a big push for zero RB. And I would be fine anchoring my team with Brees Hall. I think if we get a healthy Aaron, well, he just went. So, but I'm also fine with Amon-Ra St. Brown. So those were the two that I was considering. And obviously the guy ahead of me took Brees Hall. So I am fine taking Amon-Ra.
Gotcha. Yeah, I'm a big fan of Bijan this year too. I like the Falcons. I like the outlook.
Who just went right after me. Yeah, I would consider him there too. Yeah, I'm getting more and more interested in the Falcons. I kind of have this sinking feeling or growing feeling that that Cousins might end up there.
I think
that could make them a really good offense. I know people I get in fights with spread all the time about Kirk Cousins. We just had one on a show recently, but I'm telling you, this guy is undervalued and underrespected. And he's also, yes, he's coming off injury, but he's undervalued in these drafts, in my opinion, too. This has been a top fantasy producer, and he elevates his team around him. Vikings have been a top offense, these last few years when he's starting. So I never get the Kirk Cousins hate. So if Kirk goes there, that's going to immediately elevate all those weapons.
Yeah, I think so too. And just looking at Atlanta, that's the team that I've been digging into the most. And if you hit that like button, now you get us to 20 likes, and I'm going to put out a video with all the research that I found. And subscribe to the YouTube page, because obviously you're going to want to know when those videos come out. Going to be putting out videos like that throughout the off season, and different shows on best ball and whatnot. But yeah, Atlanta is the team that I've dug into the most. The owner of the Falcons has talked up how they're going to make a splash in free agency. And, it would not surprise me at all. They're the number 8 overall draft pick as well. And, it could be possible that a quarterback falls to them, but I think it would make a lot more sense with the weapons that they have to potentially, make a move in free agency to grab one. Because you got a lot of weapons on rookie contracts right now. And they also have the number 1 or 2 pass blocking offensive line. So they have a lot of things working to support, bringing in a decent quarterback. And, speaking of which, I think I'm going to draft, I want to draft Josh Allen here. No, I'm going to go with Burrow later. I don't really like.
Oh, because you got Chase. That's right.
Yeah. Okay, this is where it gets a little bit tricky.
I know. I was struggling with this pick.
Man, I'm going to go with Adams there because
I like that. I like Adams there. I almost wish I would have even gone against ADP. I took DJ Moore. I just think it's a little high with a rookie quarterback, but I mean, he is DJ Moore.
I don't hate it though.
Yeah. He proved me wrong last year. I kind of just didn't, they threw at a low volume the year before, and obviously he was just like the target hog for them last year. And I assume with a rookie quarterback, I just don't know what other pieces they're going to put, with them, because they do have a lot of draft capital. So wouldn't be surprised if they get a receiver too, but I still see him being a target hog. So yeah, I was kind of uncomfortable with that in that area of picks. Didn't love anything essentially.
Yeah, and that's where we need more of this information to come to us to feel more confident in it. I went with Adams because I know he's going to get the volume. The problem I had with Debo and Ayuk is they're basically crapshoot on who's going to have a breakout game with San Francisco.
Yeah,
you never know which guy's going to have the big game because you got so many weapons there. And so to have both those guys going in the second round, that seems super expensive to me. I would rather see them in the third and fourth rounds, and maybe their ADP will settle there. But for me, it just seems a little too much to draft them that early. And right now, I'm kind of looking at a bunch of decent wide receiver options. I got Olave, I got Mike Evans, and I got Malik Neighbors. I kind of want the mystery box on this one, Meg.
Oh, I like you going rookie here.
Yeah, because the more I'm reading about Malik Neighbors, I think the dude is going to be a stud.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm gonna go with Olave. I'm gonna kind of give in to ADP there. But I do like Neighbors a lot. I think he has a ton of potential. So I wouldn't have hated going Neighbors or Evans over Olave, but I'm just gonna kind of go with Olave there.
Okay, so they took Waddle. So yeah, I'm thinking I had Neighbors queued up too, but I'm still I'm gonna go Mike Evans. I think he goes back. I mean, we'll see. We got to pay attention, but I think Baker and him will go back to Tampa, and he kind of proved the age concept wrong last year, and I'll see if he can run it back one more year here. Drink the fountain of youth, because I mean he was just way undervalued last year, and I know the price is higher this year in the third round, but I'm kind of hoping he lands back in Tampa with Baker, because they seem to have a good connection. He had a great target share there.
Yeah. I do get a lot of Jamar Chase vibes off of Neighbors.
Yeah.
And
Okay.
like if you go back a couple years though,
Mm-hmm.
like Jamar Chase was going in like the 5th round. Like so I would
Right.
have felt a lot more comfortable, drafting him around the 5th round. It feels a little too soon to be drafting him in the 3rd round before I have information on like how he's going to be doing,
Right.
which team he's going to be landing on and stuff like that. I think that he might land on the Chargers at the 5th pick overall.
Mm-hmm.
I have a feeling because they're going to need some receivers, because the situation with Keenan Allen, I don't know if they're going to re-sign him. And then you got Mike Williams too
Yeah,
coming
I
off
could
the
see
ACL.
definitely one of them not returning.
Right. So we don't know which one of those guys is going to return. But if he went to the Chargers, that would be like probably the dream landing
Oh
spot,
yeah.
coming into that situation.
That's a
But
great point. Yeah.
yeah, I'm just not sure where he's going to land, because he could end up landing, like somewhere, like with a bad situation too, and you know what that does to wide receiver prospects. It just kind of kills
Absolutely.
them. Yeah. So we got let's see, Meg, you just picked. Who did you just pick here?
Let's see. I taken Evans. I'm coming back around.
Mhm.
I'm up in 2 or 3 here. So I have a couple queued up. I would like to get my first running back. So I'm waiting to see what falls here. Kind of like I talked earlier, I think I'm going to still kind of wait on, unless I kind of, running back Pacheco fell to me. So I took Pacheco.
Nice.
But unless like a quarterback I really want falls to me early, I'm fine kind of, again, waiting and building out the running back and receiver first, and kind of taking those known positions, and then finding the right stacks with them, essentially.
Nice.
Because a lot of these guys that I'm drafting right now are all kind of tied to mid to late round quarterbacks. So I'm fine with that too.
Man, I'm gonna go with Kenneth Walker here. I like Rachaad White. Like, he's in the same situation like we were talking about. It looks like Baker's probably going to end up back there.
Mm-hmm.
And if they're able to retain Baker and Mike Evans, then I think that Rachaad White will be in an equally good situation. But we just still have that uncertainty there. And
Right.
Kenneth Walker, I'm just a fan of Kenneth Walker in general. I was also looking at James Cook there.
Yep.
But I didn't want to take Cook. Too much exposure to Cook just yet. I do think that the situation in Buffalo, we see it every year with Josh Allen. He just takes too many touchdowns away from the back. And, like, as exciting, like as Cook is, it's just like that's a buzzkill on him.
But hit what Eagles and Bills, you just taking those running backs, they kind of, like you said, it buzzkills it for him. So it kind of caps that upside.
Yeah. So we're coming up. My next pick is ADP 53, or pick 53 in the draft here. I'm gonna try to, I think, grab another one of these receivers. There's a few that I like. I might go with a rookie here.
You like a Dunze? I know my brother likes him a lot. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm gonna go with him, because I do want to have some of these rookie exposure, and I think that this is enough of an area with questionability with Jaden Reed, Terry McLaurin, and Calvin Ridley. We saw Jaden Reed have an excellent season last year. 185 underdog points. He's got a lot of competition, though, and we're going to see Christian Watson healthy probably next year. So that could take away from his upside a bit. Terry McLaurin kind of had a down year. Why don't you speak on Terry
Well,
McLaurin?
I'm gonna draft him, so I'll speak on one thing I'm gonna try to lean into this year is, and it helped with the whole Lions Ben Johnson last year, and it helped with also, I think people were scared off Mike McCarthy and thinking that it was going to be some archaic offense, and I think some early signs were it wasn't, that they were still going to pass a lot, and Dallas ended up having an incredibly high pass rate over expectation. So I'm going to really try to focus this year on the offensive coordinators for these teams. It didn't work for me last year with Bieniemy, and in total, and not, at least not for the receivers. Again, it was fine. Sam Howell absolutely paid off his price, and Brian Robinson paid off his, but the receivers definitely did not in Washington. I'm hoping, Cliff Kingsbury can get the receivers involved and know that you have Terry McLaurin and Jahan Dotson too, and that you make it a priority to get the ball to them. DeAndre Hopkins had some elite years with Kingsbury, so as a true alpha, and I hope they can treat McLaurin as he is, which isn't a true alpha. So, I'm fine getting him in the 5th round there. He probably could have fallen a little longer, but I don't think he would have fallen to this point.
Yeah. What do you think of Dotson this year? Do you think that
I think both could have a bounce back year? I mean, yep. Dotson had a great rookie season, and then had still had a nose for the end zone, so to speak. Hold on, let me decide what I'm doing here. I kind of want to get another running back, but I'm not sure. What's your take on the Josh Jacobs situation? I just don't. You do take risks on free agents, but what do you think?
I think I'd go with the receiver there. I think Josh Jacobs, there's too much. We don't know if he's going to end up back on Vegas yet.
Yeah.
I think that he probably will.
Yeah. But I like that he was kind of like falling, and I was like, but then I was like, I just don't. Yeah, I don't know what to expect with that. I took Pickens because I think and Arthur, again, offensive coordinator, and coordinator like Arthur Smith is going to be known for just run the ball, very run heavy. Mm-hmm. But that opens up, we saw AJ Brown have obviously some awesome years with the Titans when Arthur Smith was OC. So he's back to being OC. Arthur Smith's frustrated the hell out of us as a head coach, but as the OC, yes, he will be run heavy, and that makes me like the Steelers running backs, but I don't mind an explosive guy like Pickens, in a situation like this, because the run could open up, obviously a big passing game for him. Yeah.
Yeah. I think that Pickens is a good pick there. I also liked Jackson Smith and Jigba and Godwin. Actually, not so much Godwin. There was another guy there that went off the board that I would have liked to. But Smith and Jigba, I think he's going to be set up for a breakout year this year. He was obviously the top wide receiver prospect last year. He didn't start getting opportunities until probably about mid-season, but when he did, he started showing those flashes that we were expecting to see of him for the entire year. And I think that, just coming into his second year, he's primed for a breakout, and I really like drafting him.
Yeah, no, I like that too. I was struggling there to decide what I really liked. I do like this area of running backs coming up. I'll say this time of year, I like to take more certainty earlier, and then take shots on guys coming back from injury, guys that are free agents. Earlier, that makes you nervous to take a guy on a free agent. But at this point in the draft, that's when you can explore an Eckler who just went, or, stuff like that, that is a little more uncomfortable. So I'm going to take the falling value with Nick Chubb. I mean, I know he's coming back from a horrific knee injury, but it sounds like he's going to go back to the Browns. That's a great run offense, built for the run, a great offensive line built for the run. And, that's more of a pick. Like if I still, and that's what's nice about 20 rounds, if I still can get like 6 running backs, then maybe I don't need him the first part of the year, that maybe he's not hitting my lineups till more of the second half or playoffs. But if he's hitting the lineups, then it could be valuable then. So at pick 80 or, my 7th pick or something, I'm fine with taking risks on, again, guys come back from injuries, well, especially rookies and free agent guys like the Ecklers and Jacobs and that kind of stuff.
Yeah, and I went with Tajay Spears. Nice. I think that with Henry, he's probably on his way out. Well, I think he pretty much is guaranteed to be on his way out after he gave his goodbye speech. To Tennessee. But Tajay Spears showed the upside. He showed a lot of flashes last year, and he looked pretty explosive. So I'm pretty excited about getting him in the 7th round or whatever that was. And the round before that, I took Burrow to get my Chase stack going there.
Yeah, nice.
So we're looking at.
Wow, it's amazing that Burrow, look at where the quarterbacks are going. If you notice, they're going later than last year to start. Allen still went in the 2nd, but there will still be, I know my brother noted on our quarterbacks rookie show that there's actually more than in total. They're kind of crunched up then in between like the 4th and like 12th round or something. There's just a lot of them going then. But you can get a lot of good quarterbacks in that like 4th to 10th round, 4th, 10th to 12th round probably. And you got obviously Stroud, Mahomes, Anthony Richardson in the 5th, Burrow, you got Burrow in the 6th. He was the 3rd round last year. Dak Prescott is going earlier this year for good reason, and Jordan Love. So you're getting a lot of good quarterbacks in these mid rounds essentially.
I think the mid rounds, if this trend continues, that's going to be the sweet spot, I think, for drafting your QB1 this year.
Yeah.
Let's see. So we're coming up on my Meg's next pick. Meg, what are you looking at here?
Well, so I have 5. So, I have 5 very solid receivers. So I think I can wait a little bit on that unless there's one that, really falls or really jumps out to me. So I was eyeing up running back. I had Brian Robinson queued up since I already had a Washington player. I talked about team stacks. I have James Conner and Jaylen Warren. I don't know, it feels a little early for Jaylen Warren. I was hoping Najee would fall here. He didn't. I still like the late round tight end builds too. So I think I am going to go James Conner. I don't know. I think it's going to be more Najee, and Warren might be like better on DraftKings because Najee Harris, it just seems like he's the one getting the goal line rolls, and on Underdog you're really touchdown hunting. So I just lean Harris over Warren, even though I know people really are impressed by Warren's explosiveness. So it just felt a little early for him, even though I did have him queued up. So I got a 3rd running back in Conner.
Nice. So I'm gonna go with Njoku here.
I like that. Yeah.
Now I like Pitts a lot with this new makeup of the offense, but the problem with Pitts is he's coming off of a knee injury that was probably a little worse than they let on. And, there's a little bit of uncertainty. I want to see, how his knee's holding up, but also we don't know his quarterback yet. And we know that we suspect that they're going to be bringing in somebody in free agency. I think Meg and I both like Kirk Cousins going there.
Right.
But, they could sign, like a guy like Russell Wilson or someone like that too. Like there's going to be some options out there. Justin Fields, another one. Like Justin Fields would be a good addition to that team. They could, I think they'd have to trade for Fields. So maybe not, I don't know what the ask is on Justin Fields to trade for him. I don't know if they're going to ask for, like a 1st rounder or, like what it's going to cost. But so that might not necessarily be the best option for them, but they could also draft a guy at the 8th overall pick. But I think in general, like that offense is set up really well. But I'm still a little uncertain on Pitt's knee situation. So next round, I'm going to grab. Let's see. I'm going to grab another receiver. I think I'm going to go with Marquise Brown here. Still a little uncertainty on where he, like might end up.
Right.
But he's a good wide receiver in general. If he ends up staying in Arizona, I think that's like probably the best case scenario for him.
Mm-hmm.
But like I think he's got upside, and drafting him in the 9th round, that gives me my 5th receiver.
Yeah.
I can focus now on running backs again, I think,
Right.
and just kind of move on from receiver for a little bit.
Yeah, I'm up now. I'm just trying to decide where to go with this one. You know what? I'm gonna go. I might do less receivers. Kind of another thing I want to talk about as a macro strategy is whatever strategy you do it right. Like sometimes I've seen so many mistakes before where people will draft, 6 or 7 receivers early or 6 receivers early and keep going. And it's like, you don't need to keep going.
Right.
Then you're getting into the whole concept of diminishing returns. So, I usually in these best big board drafts, I draft like a 3, 6, 7, 3, 6, 8, 3. On this one, I might only draft 7 receivers because I've taken 6 in my first. So that's kind of another kind of macro strategy. If you're going heavy early, and it would be the same case if you did it with running backs, then kind of, you can do less of them in total. So,
yeah. Now, like, so you're waiting on your QB right now. Are you seeing a lot of value in certain rounds in QB right now? Or are you
I still think there's value here. I mean, obviously, some of the quarterbacks we talked that went in that like kind of 5th through, 9th round, I love. But I kind of looked at the receivers I had and would be kind of fine stacking them potentially. So that's why I kind of waited a little bit longer, because I'd be fine. Some of these receivers I have will lend themselves to a stack with a later round. So this might be a true late round quarterback. I mean, who knows? Maybe I'll even do a 4 quarterback build since I get an extra pick and I load it up on. I haven't done that yet, but with 20 rounds, you can get creative.
Yep. Yeah, I like that. You still got Caleb Williams on the board, Jared Goff, Jaden Daniels. Jaden Daniels, I think we're expecting him maybe to go to the Patriots.
I hope it's not Washington. I'm a Washington fan. I'm a little worried it's RG3 all over again. You'll get very polarizing takes on Daniels. I'm worried he's going to be a one read and run guy. I'm worried from some early reports I've read and shows that I've watched. Oh, I was going to take Caleb Williams and he just went. Hey, you get sniped, but then you just have a backup plan. And I'm going to go ahead and take my first quarterback with Jared Goff because I have him on Ross St. Brown. So
nice.
We're all good. Anyways, I'm really concerned about the whole one read and run situation, and just some things I've watched about him and read, like he just takes some hits and doesn't really protect himself well, and that is like the biggest fear to me. I mean, look at Anthony Richardson. You can have all the talent in the world, but if you don't learn to protect yourself and you're not on that field, you do me no good on my best ball team. So, I obviously, and obviously that would definitely guys like Anthony Richardson, Jaden Daniels, I definitely guys that are just very much running quarterbacks. I absolutely would have. I mean, again, I have a high percentage of 3 quarterback builds, but I would never do 2 quarterbacks with one of them because I just am, a bit skeptical of the duration of a 17-game season. And again, maybe I lived through the RG3 era where he didn't protect himself very well either and went through a lot of injuries and stuff. So, I could be a little scarred from that.
So I ended up going with Chase Brown. If you watch the showdown shows during the season, like I had Chase Brown on the week that he broke out on the main slate. Like I liked him on the showdown slate, but then, like when he showed a little flash on the showdown, went all in on him on the main slate. And, he ended up getting like 19 points with like 0.6 ownership, but he wasn't my favorite running back in that spot. I liked Chuba Hubbard with Canales coming in. I like Ty Chandler as well. But I went with Brown because I got the Cincinnati stack already going, so I figured I might as well complete that.
Yeah,
But
hitting it in multiple positions. I love it.
Yeah, right. Like, so generally, like, I would have probably normally gone with one of those other guys. I like Zamir White a lot too. I might actually draft him with my next pick, because I think that Jacobs has a good chance of not ending up back there. But there are good picks in this range. Like Rashid Shaheed is a guy that's been a favorite of mine for a while. He's really the only receiver that I see in this range that I like. So I think I'm going to, and Jahan Dotson is still there. I'm going to go with Jahan Dotson. So now I got my 6th receiver. So I feel
okay. And I feel better because I was going to take Zamir White and I was like, oh wait, he's ahead of me. And then I was like looking at I was like, so I had both queued up. So good. I like it. I like where you're thinking. So I'm going to take Zamir White to get my 4th running back. Because it's a running back. That's the other thing you have to pay attention to is positional scarcity, right? So things can thin out quick. Not everybody can get 3 quarterbacks. So if you want 3 quarterbacks, you got to, do it before it gets too late. I certainly need to address that soon because, I'm getting to the 12th, 13th round and then, or my next 2 picks. And then tight end, can thin out. I haven't taken those. So, running back can thin out. So because I went receiver heavy, now I really need to kind of haul ass and address the other team, the other positions.
Yeah. Same here. I need another quarterback. I probably need another, like a solid running back before we get into these later rounds. And then tight end. Yeah, I feel like we can probably get, like some decent tight end value in this.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And that's another thing, if you wanted to do like a 4 tight end build in a 20-round draft and you waited till the very end. I don't hate that because, that's a position where unless you really pay up, and this year, ironically, it's Laporta that you have to really pay up for, but unless you really pay up for the tight end, it's going to be hard for them to really separate. And so, or they don't separate as often as the other positions do. And so, I think you can kind of ping pong between 3 or 4 guys with late round guys.
Yep. And, tight ends are a good way to shore up your team stacks too, especially when you got tight ends going super late. Like Tanner Hudson is going pretty late, and he was showing a chemistry with Joe Burrow last season. And Tanner Hudson was breaking out a little bit in general last season, and he's going pretty late. And I have Joe Burrow and Jamar Chase already. I'd rather stack Chase along with a tight end than like a T Higgins or someone like that. We don't even know if T Higgins is going to end up back on the team, and we don't know who's going to take that number 2 spot. Right. Tyler Boyd will probably be back, but Tyler Boyd, like on the weeks where T Higgins was out, it was the other receiver. I can't remember his name, like the mullet guy. That was was getting a ton of targets like over Tyler Boyd. So I just don't think that Tyler Boyd plays that well with Burrow for some reason.
Right.
Let's see. Okay, so I'm looking at I'm gonna go with Deshaun Watson here as my
you got Njoku too,
yeah, just to go with Njoku since I got him already. So I got a little stack going there.
Yeah. Nice.
I'll definitely get a 3rd quarterback in this one, like just because there's like, Deshaun Watson, the games that he did play last year, like there was a lot of talk about how he looked horrible and like he sucked and everything, but he scored over 20, at least DraftKings points in multiple games last year. Like he was actually like outperforming his salary.
Right.
And I think that there's just like so much negative taint on Deshaun Watson that when you draft him in the in the late rounds like this, that I think you can get a value on him.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely.
For sure. So let's see. It's coming back on me. I'm going to need to get my 4th running back. I was hoping to get Corum there, but he just went.
Yeah,
so,
I had him queued too.
Oh, and Herbert just went too. That was another one I was looking at.
Yeah, this is when, there's still options, but this is when it starts to thin a little more.
Yeah, I'm just going to go with Kendre Miller and hope that.
I had that cute. I like that pick. Yeah.
Yeah. Let's see what happens there. So who are you looking at here next, Meg?
Yeah, I was kind of looking for another running back or tight end, most likely. But I'm trying to decide between Michael Mayer, again, going back to my rookie tight ends from last year, or I don't know. I had Zach Moss queued up, but I just feel like it's too early for that. Actually, you know what? I didn't realize that how thin quarterback was getting. So I went ahead and took rookie Drake May with McLaurin, assuming that they draft him number 2 overall. He's got some rushing ability. He scored, I believe, 17 rushing touchdowns his last 2 years, I want to say, give or take, like 8 1 year, 9 another year. Or I don't even know if I did the math right on that, but can get some rushing touchdowns too. So, hopefully kind of protects that floor as a rookie if Washington does indeed draft him at number 2.
Yep. Yeah, and that's pretty likely, wouldn't you say? Like, and you have Terry McLaurin, right?
Yes. Yeah. So because I had McLaurin, I had him queued up, and then I didn't realize how I was like, I was going to address the running back or tight end that was getting thin too, but then I was like, oh, wait a second, quarterback's getting really thin, so I'm going to go ahead and address that.
So one thing that I noticed, Meg, is like you were going to draft Caleb Williams, right?
Mm-hmm.
And he's likely going to the Bears, and you have DJ Moore. And then like right there, you were going to complete a stack with the potential landing spot of Drake May. Are you looking to stack those rookie quarterbacks and trying to take advantage of them going late in the unknowing on those players in general and trying to get value in those stacks, or what?
Right. I wouldn't say I'm targeting it. I would say I'm open to it. You know what I mean? Like, so it's mainly more because of the receivers I got that then I'm open to it. And they fell, it's not like I had to reach for either of them. I don't believe so. I didn't. I missed on Caleb Williams, and then I got Drake May. He fell like 5 spots. So if it's like the value's there and I have the receiver already, I'm totally open to it. But it's not like something I'm trying to target. Again, in this draft, I knew I was like definitely targeting like the later round quarterback, and I'm going to go ahead and take my 3rd here with Baker Mayfield since I have Mike Evans. Again, right now you're making assumptions and hypothesizing, but I'm assuming that Evans and Baker come back to the Bucs. And I completed that stack. So I've got my 3 quarterbacks. So again, as I talk for playoffs, all of them are stacks. So it gives me, if I were to make playoffs, 3 stacks into the playoffs, which I like as well.
I like that. I just took Michael Mayer myself.
Like it.
Yeah, like 14th round.
For a second year here, I think he had a couple spike week games last year, but I certainly think a second year and he could really break out.
Yeah, I think so too. And, looking back to expectations versus reality, like the rookie tight ends breaking out last year was more the exception than the norm. So the fact that Mayer did not break out makes people think down on him a little bit. And when in reality, like these tight ends, they take like a few years to break out anyways. So
speaking of rookie tight ends, just interrupt you 1 second. One I do really like is that Jatavion Sanders from Texas. I had him queued up to maybe grab next, and he went earlier than expected. But that could be a good rookie tight end. I would prefer him a little later, given that he is a rookie and we're waiting to see the landing spot. But that's a good rookie tight end this year.
I like it. Yeah, like I'm still getting familiar with these rookie names and stuff.
Same, man.
I'm gonna grab more here and get myself a second receiver to stack with Deshaun Watson. So I got Njoku and more there with Watson. So
yeah, but I liked your point. I totally agree with your point earlier. I'm going to have the all in ACL team on my running backs, but I'm going to get another one. I took Keaton Mitchell for the Ravens. When he does come back, this is like giving, his granted, his explosiveness might not be what he was, but he looked to be a true weapon for the Ravens in a high-powered offense. But I liked your point earlier about, people are going to poo-poo guys like Mayer or Musgrave that, were the rookie tight ends that didn't really break out, but they certainly, the talent's there, they're on with good offenses that certainly could break out this year. So I like that call a lot.
What's your take on Gibson? Do you think that he's going to be back? You think it's going to be?
I don't think he'll be back, but I mean, he's one, like, if he lands in the right spot, I still think the talent's there. Use him out of the backfield and everything. So, but I don't think it'll be with Washington. But I'm not sure.
Yeah, that's interesting because that sets up Chris Rodriguez, like, who had a couple.
And I've taken a couple shots on him on the big board already, and he's definitely like a last round, 19th, 20th round guy that you can target.
Yep,
for sure.
Let's see. So right now he's coming up on Meg in a few picks. Meg, what are you looking at here?
Definitely queued up tight ends because I only have one. So so I queued up 4 tight ends to target right here before it thins out too much more, because I definitely want at least 2 more. So I've queued up Likely, Hunter Henry, Chigakonkwo, and then I'm hoping I can wait on this Davis Allen. I believe Higbee will be coming back from the late season injury. He flashed a little bit, as it says in the write-up, flashed in late season appearances. So I think he could be like a late round. But I'm going to go ahead and take Likely. I understand with Andrews, there, but you would think they would run a little more 2 tight end too after seeing how impressive Likely is. And then, of course, anytime Andrews miss, Likely becomes like an immediately late, like he's like the 1B,
Yeah. All right. Let's see.
So what are you thinking?
I want to get a running back. I don't like any of these running backs. I'm going to go with Miles Sanders.
You never know with these guys if they can. I mean, I got burned by him and the guys that just went back to back last year. I was, had plenty of Sanders and Dameon Pierce, and they just did nothing. But who knows this year? I mean, from a player take perspective, you never know. Yeah, who can kind of bounce back.
Yeah, like I would not write him off necessarily. Like, just like I'm an Eagles fan, and Miles Sanders showed some upside when he was in Philly, just not enough for them to keep him. And then he went with Frank Reich, Carolina. They traded signed him free agency. I don't know how long his contract is for. But Chuba Hubbard ended up taking over that backfield about midway through the season. Sanders showed 0 upside, and it's a complete gamble. Like, just hoping that maybe he'll get back to his old form. But I think at this point it's Hubbard's obviously backfield to lose, but you never know what's going to happen. So.
Yeah, you don't. I mean, and then with injuries, you don't, like, he could just, because of an injury, he could pop right back in there. So,
yep.
So yeah, so I'm trying to think, how many more picks do I have here? I'm trying to think what I need left. So 4 more.
My next pick, like, since I just drafted Sanders, I might take a stab on Bryce Young, because I like the coach. Canales going there.
Love Canales going there. Yeah.
Yeah. And we've seen what he did for Geno and for Baker. And maybe it's like a big part. He played a big role in that stuff, maybe. So I'm gonna take a chance on Bryce Young here.
I like that. I like that a lot. And I like the whole running back quarterback thing. I think that's totally fine. So I like that a ton.
Cool.
I'm gonna go Chigakonkwo, who's falling. I may do a 4 tight end build here, depending how it shakes out, because I'm definitely fine with just 7 receivers.
Yeah, I like that. Right now, I'm probably going to be starting to look here at getting another passing option for Joe Burrow, because I like Jalen Tyler Boyd's obviously fallen far, but I don't think that he has more upside than Jalen Hyatt. I think Jalen Hyatt probably has. Oh well, somebody just took Yosevich or whatever his name.
Oh, yeah.
I
Okay.
was going to target him, but
Okay. Gotcha.
like so now, well, there goes that.
What about it? Oh, there goes Allen. Yeah. Did you? Where is the tight end that you mentioned? He's still on the board.
Oh yeah, Tanner Hudson.
Tanner Hudson. You could cue. He's going really late.
Yeah, good call. Gonna cue him up. Get myself a third tight end. Yep, that's perfect.
Yeah.
Yes, like Tanner Hudson. Joe Burrow. We've seen him like in the past when he had what's his face, the guy that went to the Jets. When he had that tight end on the team, like he leaned on him, and then he kind of got away from tight ends. But then when Tanner Hudson started to break out a little bit, he started getting back into passing to his tight end. So I do like Tanner Hudson as a sneaky play.
Yeah. No, I like that a lot. I think that's a good late round target for sure. Okay, so I'm up in 2. So yeah, I probably want to get with 3, 5, 6, 3. I probably want to end this build as a 3, 6, 7, 4, basically based on like my strengths at the positions, I think. So speaking to kind of what we talked about earlier, I'm either going to take AJ Dillon or Chris Rodriguez, but since I did a Washington stack, I'm going to kind of assume we don't get Gibson and we do Chris Rodriguez kind of emerges as like the pass catching back for Washington. So
yeah, I like that. He was actually on my in my queue.
In the queue, yeah.
I'm gonna go with I'll go with Hudson here. I'm gonna go with a another running back. I think on my next pick. So I got 3 quarterbacks, 3 tight ends, 7 receivers, and 5 running backs right now. So I'm gonna go with just kind of close it out with a running back pick.
Yep. I like that.
And then probably just take another receiver or something on my.
I mean, that's my typical build. Because just like during the 18 round drafts, the 3, 5, 7, 3 is like that balanced build that I feel kind of the most comfortable with. And like the best. I for the big board typically just add 1 running back and 1 receiver and have been building 3, 6, 8, 3. But this one I'm going to do 3, 6, 7, 4, just because I loaded up on receiver. So I feel very comfortable with the, I'll get 1 more, but not 2 more. So with my last 2 picks, I'll get receiver and tight end.
Yeah. And I do see a receiver in here as I scroll down a little bit who I really like, who I kind of surprised to see him being drafted so late. It's Demarcus Robinson.
I've taken him a few times in these big boards. I don't understand why he's falling so late.
Yeah, it makes no sense because he was one of Stafford's favorite targets at the end there. Yeah, and I assume he's going back to the Rams, right?
Yeah, and that was even when both Kupp and Puka Nacua were healthy.
Yeah, he was kind of like their little outlet there. He
is a free agent, but it says it wouldn't be shocking to return to the Rams. So gotcha. Yeah, I would imagine. I've been drafting him, so I think it's a great pick.
Yeah, I like him a lot. Like he was showing a lot of upside, and he meshed well with Stafford. And Stafford's a elevator. He's an elevating quarterback. So
big time. Yeah.
But Calvin Johnson, we've seen Kenny Golladay even had like a stud with Stafford, and we've seen him like just elevate so many receivers, and that's one of the things that I like about Stafford as a quarterback. Receivers get better when they play with him. So.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I ended up taking Alec Pierce. To get him in like one of the last rounds, I think is good value for a guy that kind of just you're looking for spike weeks. Certainly doesn't offer much of a floor at all. But let's see.
So I'm gonna target one of these rookie running backs. I think on my next pick. Who are you looking at there?
I was just going to ask you, what do you think about? God, Travis Kelce's just getting so up there, and I'm I think he said he's coming back and everything. But what do you think about Noah Gray? I just feel like, if he were to miss any time, or just if he just doesn't run as many routes this year, because, I don't know. He seemed to be, even though he was elite in the postseason still, he just seemed to be really slowing down this year. Kelsey, that is.
Yeah, definitely don't hate it. Like I think Noah Gray has shown some chemistry with Patrick Mahomes.
Right.
Be interested to see what they do in the draft, because they're going to be looking for passing.
That's true. I definitely think a receiver's got to be their top priority. But yeah, I guess if they did end up drafting a tight end, then that would sting.
Yeah. We Brock. What's his face? Brock. What's his last name? The
Purdy?
main tight end.
Oh, Brock.
I think it's a Brock, isn't it?
From
the top prospect.
Oh, Brock Bowers. Brock Bowers.
Yeah, Brock Bowers. There we go.
Yes. Okay.
I highly doubt he'll last to the end of the first round, but
right.
Can you imagine if they got him?
Yeah.
Jesus. Like this would go from Kelsey.
I mean, they could end up with like a really elite receiver. This receiver class is so deep from what I'm hearing, and so talented that like there could be just still a monster receiver at pick 32 or whatever.
Yeah.
So
they're talking about Bowers in the top 10 picks.
Yeah, that's wild. I didn't realize he was going to go that high until just recently.
Yeah, I'm wondering, which team will end up with him. Like that'll be. I mean, it's gonna be a fun draft this year. I think there's a lot of good weapons on the offense.
Oh yeah. Yes, especially to see where it falls for us as in the best ball space. Definitely will see where these kind of weapons all land.
Yep.
I don't know. The only other one I had queued up was Jelani Woods, but I mean, it just he didn't spike as much as I thought last year. Everything else feels a little thin. You could do Donald Parham.
Dolce stands out to me.
Yeah, I was gonna say he'll be back. He's back with the Broncos still, right?
Yeah, and he got hurt last year, so he didn't have his chance to break out. Like he broke out in his rookie season. Yeah.
No, he definitely had some spike weeks his rookie season. So I like that. Again, I'm going for tight ends. So
20th round for freaking Greg Dulcich.
Yeah.
Last year he was going in like the 11th.
Oh, yeah, I know. Isn't it funny to see like kind of pricing on these guys, knowing where they went last year, and it's like you said, it's so reactionary. You made the point about Michael Mayer, but it's just so reactionary. And it's like, well, it's a new season. We don't know.
Exactly. Yeah. All right. I'm going with Will Shipley. I don't know who the hell he is, but like I drafted him with spread the other day, and right now I didn't see anyone that I liked, so I just said screw it. I'm going to take him.
Well, I like it, and I'll learn about him more. Steve and I are taping the running backs episode today, and it'll be up on FanSpeak channel later tonight. So check that out, because I have no idea either, and I'm learning.
Nice. Yeah. So Meg, before we break down our teams, why don't you tell them, like where they can find you and where they can find all your content, CBS included.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. So obviously on Twitter, Megs08DFS, or follow at FanSpeak. Be sure to check out all our content on fanspeak.com and the FanSpeak Network on YouTube. But fanspeak.com, again, we're going to be cranking out a ton of content, starting essentially this week. And then just really cranking it out more and more for best ball, especially after the draft, covering all sorts of topics from, strategies to stock watch to, kind of undervalued, overvalued, different macro strategies, more diving in. So kind of all the stuff we did last year and more. So we're have a ton of best ball content on FanSpeak all spring and summer. And check out Ultimate GM too if you like the draft process as well. Give that a try. And I do also. You can also find me on CBS Sports, the Fantasy Football Today channel. Their DFS content, I did shows there, and this hopefully we'll be doing some best ball content for them as well this summer. So be all over in the best ball space. You'll see me drafting a lot. So it was fun getting the first one live here with you, Simon.
Yeah, for sure. Like Meg, why don't you break down your team and tell everybody what you were thinking there?
Yeah, sure. Let me pull this up so I can. Okay. Yeah, let me look at it by, well, for my team, I did, like I said, a 3-6-7-4. Usually do a 3-6-8-3, but because I went heavy receiver, I did 3-6-7-4 as far as like, kind of the line of construction and position allocation. So kind of the way by position, it was Jared Goff, Drake May, Baker Mayfield, Isaiah Pacheco, Nick Chubb, James Conner, Zamir White, Keaton Mitchell, Chris Rodriguez, Amon-Ra St. Brown, DJ Moore, Mike Evans, Terry McLaurin, George Pickens, Cortland Sutton, Alec Pierce, Luke Musgrave, Isaiah Likely, Chigakonkwo, and Greg Dulcich. So kind of like what I talked about, because I had drafted a lot of receivers early, I ended up kind of stopping and just getting one later, and then got 4 tight ends because I waited to do a super late round tight end build. And obviously definitely wanted 6 running backs because I have a couple guys coming back from injury. And then I was able to do, stack all my quarterbacks. Obviously I have Goff, Amon-Ra St. Brown, and Drake May, Chris Rodriguez, and Terry McLaurin, assuming that Drake May is drafted number 2 by Washington. And then of course, Baker Mayfield and Mike Evans. So like I kind of mentioned in our strategy, I like to make sure there's 3 quarterback stacks, and I am totally willing to stack outside of just the receiver position. So I was happy to get Chris Rodriguez there. I'd like to do that even more. Wasn't quite able to in this draft, but overall happy with it.
Yeah, and I like that late pick on Rodriguez. I think he's going to be a value.
Yeah,
especially if Gibson ends up off the team, because
right.
Brian Robinson is no lock for like even potentially being a starter with a new coaching regime coming in. What do you think? What do you think?
I mean, I still think he's. I think he showed that he can be like the RB1 for them last year. But I would have to imagine that they saw enough in Rodriguez to use him in the passing game at the very least. So as such a late round pick, I like that. The only bummer is I didn't really I kind of had a few rookies outside of May queued up because we talked about how deep that receiver class was, and they just kind of kept getting sniped from me. So there's definitely some rookies I want to try to attack during this big board before their value kind of skyrockets up after their landing spots. Yep. But it just didn't fall right in this one.
Yep. And that's one of the things is like ADP is a good guide for where you want to draft guys. You don't need to use it as gospel, but at the same time, you don't want to overreach and overpay for guys. So it made a lot of sense. Like when you're letting the draft board fall to you, that doesn't necessarily mean that you have to, adhere to whatever the ADP is. It just means you don't want to reach for guys, but you want to use it as kind of a guidance. And if guys don't fall to you the way that you want to, don't necessarily overextend yourself to try to pick them up. So,
Absolutely.
With me, I ended up with Joe Burrow and Chase Brown and Jamar Chase and Tanner Hudson as my Cincinnati stack.
My favorite kind, the 4 different positions. Love it.
Yeah, exactly. Had to go with what we were talking about for macro strategy there. On top of that, ended up with Deshaun Watson, stacking him with Elijah Moore and David Njoku. I felt like there's a lot of value on those Cleveland guys. I went with Bryce Young as my 3rd quarterback. Went with 3-6-8-3 build, and I had Bryce Young with Miles Sanders. I added Kenneth Walker, Tajay Spears, Kendre Miller, and Will Shipley as my running backs. I don't know anything about Will Shipley, but we'll find out if he's.
We'll find out. Yeah,
we got the combine coming up soon enough.
Yeah.
I ended up with Devontae Adams, Chris Olave, Romeo Duns. I don't know how to pronounce his last name just yet. Marcus Brown, Jahan Dotson, and Demarcus Robinson, and then Michael Mayer and I already said David Njoku. But I was thinking about doing a Vegas stack, but I really don't know if they're going to end up with the same Aiden O'Connell as the quarterback.
Yeah, I have to feel like they'll do something else. I just don't know what. Yeah.
Yeah, because he wasn't he got his opportunity. He wasn't that impressive, so I wouldn't be surprised to see them kind of go in a different direction and kind of send him to the backup position. But who knows? Because I know that they got a lot of salary issues or just, like finance issues in general. I think that's a large reason why they weren't able to lock in Kingsbury, because I think there was talk a couple years ago when they had what's his face, the old coach, the one who got fired before McDaniels.
Gruden.
They owed Gruden so much money that they were so cash strapped. I imagine with McDaniels too. Like they fired McDaniels and they probably owe him a bunch of money too. So I mean, like they're probably cash strapped. So I don't know what they're going to do with their quarterback position, but like I would not be surprised to see them go in a different direction than Aiden O'Connell. So even though I have two receivers, I didn't want to pull the trigger on Aiden O'Connell when Bryce Young was sitting right there. So
I agree with that totally. Yeah, I wouldn't be surprised if they did. Spread and I have talked about this, and I kind of agree with him. I wouldn't be surprised if they, in that mid round of the first round, drafted like a Michael Penix Jr. or something like that. One of the like 4th, 5th quarterbacks on the board.
Yeah, for sure. So yeah, make sure to hit the like button, and I'll get a short video out on those Falcons. Get me to 20 likes on this video, and make sure to subscribe to the YouTube page. Going to be doing best ball content all throughout the summer, having a lot of cool guests on like Meg. And I definitely appreciate everybody subscribing so far, up to 500, looking for 600 by the end of, let's say, March. So definitely appreciate the help getting there. We got a ton of catalysts coming up. We got the combine, the draft, the schedule release, free agency, ton of stuff. The NFL season is year round, and you're going to want to check out FanSpeak to get a lot of articles on that. And you're going to want to keep subscribed to the YouTube channel here and get all the shows that are going to be coming out. So thanks guys for watching, and we'll see you guys later.